I have been asked to ask a question. Is the law black and white? Is there any room for a judge sitting before a body to have latitude? Is it black and white that certain things have to take place?
One of the good things about the position Chris and I are running for is a trial court judge. You hire that judge to make decisions. There are precedents out there. The U.S. Supreme Court, the Illinois Supreme Court, and our appellate court have set precedents that we have to follow. Now, it's up to us to apply the facts of that specific case to the law and make our decision based on that. That's what you are voting for one of us for our ability to apply the facts of that particular case to this law. We have to follow precedent, but we have to interpret that precedent with the facts of each particular case that comes in front of us.
First of all, let me say, when I went to law school, before I went to law school, I didn't have any lawyers in my family. I didn't have, in fact, I'm the first one in my family to ever graduate with a bachelor's degree. So I had this misconception of the law being this fixed black and white sort of structure that I would suddenly know by the time I got done with law school. Well, it didn't take me long to realize that law school is not about teaching you the law, it's about teaching you how to think like a lawyer, how to reason. And through the 3 years of law school, you absorb some laws and you come out and you know some laws because you have to, just by a function of learning. But it's not about learning specific black, you stop at a red light, you go at a green light. It's not about that. Think about it, all the things in the world, if they were every single situation were codified, put in a book, that library would be bigger than this room. So there are all kinds of areas that aren't addressed specifically by the law. Now, John says that we take the facts and we apply the facts to the law. We learn in law school that you don't apply the facts to the law. You apply the law to the facts. The participants come into the courtroom, regardless of whether it's a civil courtroom or a criminal courtroom, and they attempt to prove what the facts are. And you have a fact finder, and sometimes if you have a bench trial, that fact finder is a judge. Sometimes it's a jury. And it's the jury's job to decide what the facts are. And then it's the judge's job to apply the law to the facts. Now, the question is whether or not there are any black and white. Is it all black and white, or are there gray areas? Of course, there are going to be many gray areas. And as much as a judge you want to control that, maybe, you can't. It's not within your control to say it's whether or not it's a gray area. Those facts, as they're proven in your courtroom, are what determine whether or not it's a gray area or it's some area that's specifically addressed by a specific statute. And that's the judge's responsibility. Once the facts are determined, apply the law to the facts. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Jahan Gordon, and I have had the privilege and opportunity to be your state representative for the last 19 months. I know many of you in this room, but if you don't know me personally, I was a young woman who was born and raised in this community by a woman by the name of Annie Jo Gordon, who is a community organizer and an education advocate, a jobs advocate, and a gentleman by the name of Sonny Gordon. Typically, he comes to all these events to support his baby girl, but he isn't here this evening. I'd like to thank the NAACP for all that they've done for creating a greater opportunity for all people, not just people of color. And because of the work of the NAACP, I now have the opportunity to serve as your state representative. Before you all elected me on November 4th of 2008, there had never been an African American representative outside of the city of Chicago and East St. Louis. You all did that. So thank you to the NAACP, and thank all of you for voting for me as your state representative. The time that I have spent in the legislature has been one that has been very tumultuous. My very first vote in the Illinois General Assembly was to impeach a governor. Typically, freshman representatives don't take votes like that, and they definitely aren't their first votes, but it surely was mine. And if that was any indication, boy, was I up for a ride. I went into a full-on budget crisis 2 months into my tenure in the Illinois General Assembly. There were questions about, well, what is the budget deficit? When I first started running for office in 2007, Illinois' budget deficit was $1 billion. After the market crash of September 2008, that budget deficit went from about 1.7 billion, between 1.7 and 2 billion, to around 9 to 11 billion. It's significant. We have some very difficult tasks ahead of us, and it's going to require a lot of work, and more so than work, working together. That's one of the things that I have had the ability to do, and I've had a track record of doing that since I've been in the Illinois General Assembly. Every single bill that I've ever co-sponsored has Republican co-sponsorship. I am a Democrat, but I felt that the kind of community that I represent, I don't just represent Democrats, I don't just represent Republicans, I don't just represent independents, I represent everybody. So I wanted to ensure that the legislation that I brought forward for this community was one that was representative of everyone here. So I try to always get Republican co-sponsorship on every piece of legislation that I've ever sponsored for you. I have made a priority issues like education, fighting for education funding reform, fighting to continue to preserve the K-12 public education system that we have here in the state of Illinois, fighting for adult education, folks who have made the decision to go back and try to better themselves and better their lives. I have sponsored and co-sponsored massive ethics reforms because many of the things that we have experienced with governors and corruption in government isn't just a Democrat thing or a Republican thing. It has been rampant. So I felt that it was extremely important to show the citizens of this community that ethics and integrity is important. So some of the ethics reforms that were passed were massive, they were expansive, and it will take a lot of time to win back the hearts and the minds and souls of the people of this community because it has been lost with some of the tactics of governors and politicians in the past, but I am up for that duty. Thinking about the issue that is most prevalent on the minds of the people of the 92nd District, and that is that of jobs. I actually have a track record on ensuring that the people of this district have an opportunity to have gainful employment, to take care of themselves and their families. I've passed legislation to save over 472 jobs at Keystone. If there's anyone in this room who knows anyone who works at Keystone, may I see your hand, please? I worked on ensuring that the manufacturer's purchase tax credit at Caterpillar, Keystone, and Komatsu depend upon to ensure that they have the opportunity to continue to make the investments for jobs for the future. If anyone in here knows someone who works for Caterpillar, Keystone, or Komatsu, please raise your hand. Thank you. This is extremely important. I ask you to raise your hand because I want people to know how government affects everybody. Oftentimes people lose sight on how much government plays a part in our lives. Many people say government is too expansive. Sometimes it may be, but it affects all of us, and that's why it's so important that all of you are here this evening to participate and allow the important exchange of dialogue to happen between all of the opponents and all the folks who are running for office, because it's so important that you understand that your vote is powerful and the person that you put in that office is going to have an ability to affect your life.
Good evening, everybody, and thank you for being here so long. I know it's been a long night here already. I'm Jim Montalongo. I'm a businessman. I've been in business for the last 20 years. I would have never thought when I graduated from Bradley University that starting a business, because there were no jobs at that time, that starting a business from my kitchen table, that I would be able to raise a family of 3 in this community here. When I'm talking about my family as well, you know, I'd like to give a public thanks to Gene Petty for being a coach for my sons in golf for many years. And today my son won to go, he placed to go to state golf finals today. So thank you, Gene, for all those years of help. I've been honored to serve the people here as a Peoria City Councilman for 3 years now. It's my first term. While I'm very proud of many things that this council has accomplished, I have to say, you know, to point out the obvious things right now that people are talking about is the budget. I have served on a council that has balanced the budget for the last 3 years without raising property taxes, and I might add, we made every one of our pension payment obligations. Ladies and gentlemen, to talk to you about the reason why I'm running for state representative. the things that concern me the most is that our state over the last 2 years has lost 214,000 jobs. We have an unfunded pension liability of $80 billion. And we now have a deficit of $15 billion. Over the last 2 years, it's grown by $5 billion. And it's included $8 billion of borrowing. There are many men and women in this community who work very hard to move this community forward. And the irresponsibility of our state is unacceptable. I'm running on a platform that we need to balance this budget without raising taxes on the people. And we need to be creating jobs. I can't tell you the number of people that I've talked to over this last 6 months, and it's been one heck of an experience and one that I'll never forget. But knocking on the doors and talking to people all over this district and seeing firsthand and talking to people who don't have a job and how desperately many of them want to work. Those are the two items that I am going to work vigorously on to change our community. Thank you.
What can you do, what will you do to attract new business to the Peoria area? And when I mean new business, I mean bringing in new business here that will provide a sustainable living wage for the people of Peoria.
When you talk with business owners here that already have a presence in this community and other businesses that are looking to relocate or add an additional wing or an additional location to their particular facility, the first thing that they want to know before they go into any community, number one, is they want to know the level of education attainment for the people in that area. Anytime a business comes into an area, they want to know that the people who are going to be applying for their jobs are high skilled and they're educated. That's number one. So what I think that we have as a state legislator, because there are things that you can do as a legislator to increase opportunities for jobs to come into an area, and there are things that happen at the local level between the city and the county. So that would be my first concern, is ensuring that we are educating our young people properly so that they are highly qualified for any 21st century job. There are many pieces of regulations, many regulations within the state of Illinois that have been very cumbersome on businesses. And one of the reasons why I think that I have been able to receive the support from the Illinois Black Chamber of Commerce, the Peoria Chamber of Commerce, and groups maybe like the AFL-CIO that don't necessarily see eye to eye all the time. But these organizations oftentimes one only supports Democrats, the other only supports Republicans, but they have both of these organizations. They've all supported me because I have been a person who's always willing to sit down at the table and listen. Oftentimes what happens in this process is people bring ego into play, when all you should be doing is listening to what the people's needs are and assessing the environment that we're in and making the right decision, not because it's good for a long political career, but because it's what's good for the people. So what I have been willing to do and what I will continue to do is to assess the current environment that we're in so that businesses want to come to the state of Illinois, and in particular the 92nd District. So if that means going against maybe a particular group or organization because some of the implications of what they may want to force that business to do, we have to think for the long term. We have to ensure that the things that we are doing right now provide a greater opportunity for young men and women who want to have the opportunity to be able to raise their families here in this community.
You know, the best thing that government can do for business is get out of the way.